for this glory, this reverence, and this respect for God. And strength. Where is strength? Strength is not in myself. Strength is not in me to save myself and to direct my path. Strength is in God. And so David says, ascribe to the Lord strength. And then again, verse 29. Command number 6, ascribe to the Lord the glory due His name. And then notice he also says you need to worship this God. Bring an offering, David says, and worship. Come before Him. That's commands number 7 and number 8. Bring an offering and come before Him and worship the Lord in holy array. New American Standard says. Holy array. Now that might suggest that the garments, for example, the priests had to wear special garments when they went into the temple in order, the tabernacle rather, in order to offer sacrifices to God. It might suggest that their garments were to be those holy special garments of the priest. It might suggest in a metaphorical way that we need to be dressed in righteousness when we come into God's presence. But then there are other translations that take those words to be referring to God Himself. The Contemporary English Version says, worship the Lord majestic and holy. The English Standard Version says, worship the Lord in the splendor of holiness. And so man is to recognize that God is holy. And man is to come into God's holy presence, dressed in holiness and in righteousness. And we understand this side of the cross, the only way to do that is by approaching God through Jesus Christ. Well, then David goes on in verse 30, command number 10. And David tells the peoples that you need to tremble before Him, all the earth. The word here, tremble, is also translated in other places having labor pains, writhing in labor pains. And so David says you need to come and tremble in God's presence. Why? Because He is the great judge of all the earth, and He has a standard that He expects man to live up to. And that causes us to tremble in His presence. Indeed, the world is firmly established. It will not be moved. God sustains the world. God is the one who holds the worlds in the palm of His hand. And we need to tremble when we come into His presence. And then, interestingly, in verses 31 through 33, David turns his attention to the inanimate items in this world. And these are also commands. They're third-person commands, but they're commands nevertheless. And he says, let the heavens be glad, and let the earth rejoice, and let the heavens and the earth say, notice among the nations, the Lord reigns. Our friends and our co-workers, our family needs to understand that Jesus Christ reigns today. He is our Savior and He is our Master. And He is sitting on His throne, and we need to ascribe glory and honor, reverence and respect to Him. And then verse 32, let the sea roar and all that it contains. Let the fields exult and all that is in it. Then the trees of the forest will sing for joy before the Lord. Notice, because He is coming to judge the earth. And then command number 11 is in verse 34. David says, give thanks. Give thanks to the Lord. What can you thank God for today? We can thank God that we have the health that allows us to come this morning to worship. We can thank God for our spouse. We can thank God for our children. We can thank God for our parents. We can thank God for our jobs. We can thank God for our homes. We can thank God for those things that we have in our homes that we don't need but we enjoy. We can thank God for the country we live in. We can thank God for the state we live in. Many of us may want to thank God that we live close to Lexington where the Wildcats are. We've got all kinds of things that we can thank God for. Give thanks to God, David says, for He is good, and His loving kindness is everlasting. The loving kindness of God is God's commitment to His promise to man. The word loving kindness translates a Hebrew word that carries with it several different aspects. It's love, it's dedication, it's commitment, it's faithfulness. All of that bound up in the one word. God's loving commitment to His promise to mankind to save him through Jesus Christ. And so we praise God for His loving kindness, and it is everlasting. And then in verse 35 is the 12th and final command. David says, then say to God, save us, O God of our salvation, and gather us, and deliver us from the nations, to give thanks to your holy name and glory in your praise. Here's what you need to do, David says. You need to come into God's presence. That is, he says back up in verse 29, you need to come worship. And here's what you need to do in your worship. You need to call on God to save us, to gather us from all the nations and deliver us from all the nations, so that we can give thanks to God and that we can glory in His praise. We will be praised by God one day. Man may not praise us. We may never have our names written in the record books. We may never have our names written in the newspaper. We may never receive the Presidential Medal of Freedom. We may never receive any accolades from man. But if we die faithful in Jesus Christ, we will receive praise from God. And what more could we want? And then David says this doxology in verse 36, blessed be the Lord, the God of Israel, from everlasting to everlasting. Declare His glory among the nations. I told you at the beginning that I had two opportunities for us to declare His glory among the nations. This morning with the Paris congregation, and one of them. You know that Allison Rogers is going to Honduras during spring break with her social club from Free Heart. And she has asked various people to help finance that trip. Now, to a college student, $1,300 may sound like a lot. $1,300 in the Church of Jesus Christ is nothing. I want to encourage you to help support Allison and her trip to Honduras. Honduras is a country of about 8 million people. They're going to the capital, Tegucigalpa. I've been working on that one all week. Tegucigalpa is the capital of Honduras, and it has 1.1 million people. It's predominantly a Catholic country. And so they need the New Testament taught there. They need to understand what Jesus expects out of them. They need to understand the importance of doing God's things in God's ways. It's a poor country, as you would expect. Fairly literate country. And so when they teach and they evangelize and they conduct their VBS, then they're going to be talking to people who can read literature. That makes it a whole lot easier to evangelize. They're a hard-working people, producing various goods, as you could say. They're people who wake up in the morning and they go to work because they have families that they want to support. And they come home after working all day in the fields. And there are people there who want to know what God says. And so Allison has said, I'm going to sacrifice my week of spring break. Other people are going to be soaking it in on the beaches of Florida, or Alabama, or Mississippi, or wherever. But some of these college students have said, I'm going to spend my spring break in a poor country, giving them shoes and clothes and food, conducting a VBS, loving their children, and trying to help them understand the gospel. I took my first foreign trip after I graduated from college. In fact, spent a month in Vienna, Austria. When you see, all of us as adults know that everybody needs the gospel. But when you go there and you see it firsthand, it makes it a whole lot more real. And you recognize how important the gospel is. You recognize how blessed we are as Americans to have the material resources that we have coming out of our ears. You recognize how important it is for there to be missionaries who will go work in places that's not any easier, or probably not any harder, to do mission work in other places outside of the United States. But it needs to be done. The United States has been blessed over the last 200 years with a wealth of material resources that has made our country the wealthiest of any nation in world history. And God has given us the resources to spread the gospel to other countries. And so Allison is going to Honduras for spring break, and she's asked us to help finance the trip. I would encourage you, $5, $10, $15, $20. Pass it along to Russ, and you can pass it along to the church in Tennessee that's sponsoring this effort. The second one, the second opportunity that we have to declare His glory is closer to home. It's just north of us in Harrison County. Harrison County has a population of 18,000 people, just a little smaller than Bourbon County. We have already given some of our own members, the Cochran family and the Rose family and the Mobley family, to go up there and establish a congregation of the Lord's Church after the pattern of the New Testament and try to teach these people, who are our neighbors, the gospel of Jesus Christ, to declare His glory among people who need to hear it. We even have some who go up there and support them on Sunday night, or who go up on Wednesday night in order to support them and encourage them. I can tell you, having been there and done that when you have other people coming and being there personally and in your presence to encourage you and to pray for you, it can be very encouraging to know that there are people who are standing with you and helping you. Well, the Licking Valley congregation has already gotten the exterior part of their building done. Our own Danny Vandy, we'll call him our own Danny Vandy has been up there working all last year to get that building finished. And now they're asking for help to finish the inside. So that when Danny returns from Florida, he can get to work on the inside, finish it up, and they can have that building finished and not owe anybody anything. Not any disrespect to our banks, because we like those people. But it's better not to owe them anything, isn't it? And so if we can give to the Licking Valley congregation to help them finish their building so that they can move in where they can have nice facilities to worship God and to evangelize, then we have done something else to declare the glory of God. In all of this that we do, we are fulfilling the prayer of the Song of David here in 1 Chronicles chapter 16. Declare the glory of God among all the nations. Now what else can we do? We can share with a fellow Christian what God has done for us. Maybe we don't talk about God enough outside of worship. Share with a fellow Christian what God has done for you. Talk with a non-Christian friend about something that God has done for you, how God has answered your prayer for you. Encourage other Christians in their efforts to serve God. And also, we can tell a member of our family about some recently answered prayer. Talk about God. Talk about Christ outside these four walls. Declare His glory here in Paris,